Hi there, folks. Grant Stinchfield here. This is Stinchfield, the podcast. Look, the Democrats, now being led by Kamala Harris, are not only waging war on women's sports, they're waging war on God. I don't know if you heard about Kamala Harris and her recent rally where someone yells, "Jesus is the Lord," and she says, "You're at the wrong rally." That tells you all you need to know about who Kamala Harris really is. Okay? It tells you all you need to know about where the Democrats stand and their war on God. And it is, folks, a war on God. Make no mistake about that. Now, you also have women's sports. Well, they wage war on women's sports by letting men participate in them. Apparently, they're very angry that all of you don't watch women's sports in record numbers, that women athletes don't get as much money as men do. And there's lots of reasons behind that. We're going to get into all of that. Megan Rapinoe, Sue Bird, won an WNBA star, won a soccer player. I don't know so much about Sue Bird and what her political leanings are. I'm sure she's a Democrat, but Megan Rapinoe is a radical leftist. They go on Meet the Press, and they're given a platform. And it shows how out of touch and delusional they really are. This sums up, folks, everything we face as this election plays out now with just, 2 weeks left? So we're going to get into all of that. Plus, President Trump at McDonald's, viral videos, greatest political stunt of all time. I'll admit it's a stunt, but it's a stunt that worked, and it shows a great contrast between Kamala Harris, Lion Kamala, and, of course, President Trump as well. Adam Schiff has problems. Jay Obernolte, the congressman from California, is with us to talk about a deficit that now reaches $1.8 trillion. So a very, very big show today. But before we get to that, let me tell you, folks. All right, does anybody notice a difference with me? I've lost now, yes, if you can believe it, 12 pounds in just 3.5 weeks on the Energized Health program. The secret is in the science, but it's also in the simplicity. I am not killing myself with workouts. Yes, I work out with weights, and I always had, but I've added in a very small workout to this program. Super easy. I have a diet plan now. I am never hungry. I don't feel like I'm struggling through this diet. It is super simple. And I'm getting myself hydrated. It is all about cellular hydration, and the results you can achieve are absolutely astonishing. And I'm telling you firsthand, folks. I got involved with them. They came to me and said, "Hey, we want you to try this out." I said, okay. I could tighten things up a little bit, and bing, bang, boom. I'm on track, man. And I credit energizedhealth.com/Grant, energizedhealth.com/Grant. There's coaching involved in this. There's recipes involved in this. The plan is all laid out for you. And again, it is super simple. This is life-changing, mind, body, soul. It's a total body transformation. God bless the folks at Energized Health who are helping me. energizedhealth.com/Grant. Check them out today. Folks, let me explain something to you. When it comes to Democrats, when it comes to Kamala Harris, the war on God is very real. The war on women is very real. This idea that women's sports should be equal to men's sports in a Democrat's mind is very real. They forget the reality that people are human and that men are stronger, faster, and more entertaining when it comes to watching sports of any kind on any field, court, or ice rink. It's just the bottom line. I hate to break the news to everybody. They're faster, they're stronger, they're more energetic, they're more talented. And so they will always be watched more, and there'll always be more money going to it because more people want to watch it. Now, I want to talk about that because Meet the Press had Megan Rapinoe on. This is this pink-haired, blue-haired, purple-haired, whatever the hair of the day she might want to go with. She's the soccer player who's not very good anymore, by the way, but she's still somehow the voice of women's sports. They had her on. All the while, Kamala Harris is holding a rally waging war on God, okay? Jesus is Lord, somebody yells, and she says, "Oh, you're at the wrong rally." I'll play you that in a moment, too. But let's get to Megan Rapinoe because she says we just don't understand about women's sports.
I feel like we just came to the end of all the excuses of why nobody likes women's sports, and it turns out everybody watches women's sports. Everybody likes it. Everybody's into it. Turns out, oh, we're really good at sports. We're really entertaining. We're actually really amazing off the court. We care about our teammates. We care about our community. We care about...
Well, you might care about your teammates. You might care about your community, but nobody's watching. At times they watch. Yes, Caitlin Clark has been phenomenal, but Caitlin Clark is phenomenal because why? In many respects, she does things that men do. She's Steph Curry-esque on a basketball court. She makes three-pointers from near half court on a regular basis, not just with the clock running out. Yes, people will watch that because that is exceptional. Just as I watch NBA basketball because even a lowly New York Knicks game is more exceptional to watch than a WNBA game, and yet they had the WNBA Finals last night, which Dan the Phone Man said was a great game. He got sucked in, but I would offer up, and I can't wait to see the ratings on this, that I don't think that Dan was in the majority. I mean, I think maybe people thought it was an exciting game, but I think people were either watching the Dodgers last night beat the Mets, or they were watching the Pittsburgh Steelers game where President Trump was attending. It was Sunday Night Football. And the National League Championship Series against the WNBA Finals. Who do you think's going to win that battle?
Grant, I'm pretty sure that I was not among the tens of millions watching the game. This is only because I sort of have a joking but now kind of serious pact with Jen that I'm not watching the Dodger games because they seem to do better when I'm just not watching. So I just was like, oh, WNBA Finals is on.
Let me say this about the Dodgers last night, and I noticed a change in them. Where from about the third inning on, I was looking at their faces in the dugout. They knew they were going to win. I don't know if anybody else noticed this. They had an air about them, an attitude about them. They knew they were going to win. This is something that also happens to men. I don't really see those faces in women's sports very often. Occasionally you might, but I don't see it very often. So this is why I think women's sports will never be as popular as Megan Rapinoe wishes they would be. She continued on Meet the Press.
Politics. We care about making the world a better place, and it's an incredibly desirable product for people to watch, for players to play in, for sponsors to sponsor, for people to put on TV. So it's like we always just feel like we've been knowing this is ready, and I feel like everyone else is now ready for that.
Oh, really? I don't think everybody else is. I honestly think she's delusional in this. It's quite frankly, it's wishful thinking on her behalf. Okay? Wishful thinking. And the ratings will tell the story tomorrow. That I promise you. All right? Here's another clip. This is Sue Bird talking about they're not looking at sports. Sue Bird is a great WNBAer, right? Dan the Phone Man. She played for UConn. Is that correct?
Yeah, UConn and then Seattle in the WNBA. Great player.
So she is saying that well, here, let's listen to Sue Bird.
Megan and I talk about this all the time, is a lot of times we're not looked at based on our potential. Right? Whether it's a young athlete, somebody who has already accomplished a lot, it's never like, oh, let me invest in this and see what happens in 5 to 10 years because I see something. It's always, okay.
You know, you're asking a tall order of a company that makes sneakers or jerseys or clothes or cars. I'm going to invest in you now for 11 years down the road. That's not how it works.
What have you done, and do you deserve to be paid now based on what you did do, but never looking to the future? I would challenge corporate sponsorships, so companies, businesses, TV networks, to start looking at us based on our potential, what they think is going to happen, not, well, let's wait and see in a couple years to see if this is real.
Okay, but a couple years have gone by, and it's not real except for Caitlin Clark, who you're just chasing out of the WNBA now. For those, I know everybody out there has to know who Caitlin Clark is, but she is the phenom, brand new rookie. Well, this will be her second year now in the WNBA if she doesn't go to Europe. I mean, they're chasing her out. Why? Because she's a white woman who's tremendously good. And they hate that about her, and they hate that she gets all the publicity. Does she get publicity because she's white? Maybe a little bit. Maybe she's, in my mind, now mind you, okay, I hate Boston teams, but she's my Larry Bird. I think if Larry Bird was black, he wouldn't be half the player that he was. Because he was white, he got a lot of attention. Now, I know Larry Bird was a great player, but I hate to break the news to you. They loved him because he was white. My Boston friends get so mad at me when I say that. Oh, Trent Tucker. Do you remember him? He played for the New York Knicks. Larry Bird would have been the equivalent of Trent Tucker if he was black. Great three-point shooter. That's not true, by the way. But if you want to trigger a Celtics fan, you just come up with something like that. So the reality of all this, though, is that, yes, race plays a role in all of this. Fine, who cares? So it plays a role, but Caitlin Clark is phenomenal. And this idea that you're gonna reward your potential future without proving it first. What does this sound like? This sounds like a Democrat. This sounds exactly what Kamala Harris is asking us to do in this election. Oh, well, reward me now with giving me the White House. You've seen me for 4 years, but you need to reward me for what I can do. Hey, Sue Bird, we've seen you now for a decade. Hey, Megan Rapinoe, we've seen you for a decade. We got it. And the rewards are still not coming. You act just like Kamala Harris through all of this. So, of course, they've got to get into politics. So I guess we need politicians to now come to the rescue of women's sports. We need politicians to come to the rescue of women's sports, of having men play in those sports. But we don't need them coming to the rescue for somehow just throwing more money at women for a game that nobody wants to watch. And I apologize if I come off sexist on this. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you put Mickey Mouse up on primetime on NBC, and if it had giant ratings, then pay Mickey Mouse all the money he wants. I don't care. It has nothing to do with what the show is about, what the sport is, men or women. It strictly has to do with eyeballs. I'm a money guy, all right? I'm not going to pay money for something that's not going to have a return on investment. That's what these girls are asking advertisers to do. Here's Rapinoe to politicians.
What is your message, if you could speak to lawmakers, to people who have the ability to change things, not just in sports, but across all industries? What's the message to them?
I think in so many ways, I would love for people to just believe in it, and that would be reflected in the policies that they craft up, but that's obviously not the case, and it's been very entrenched, so like people don't really think about it, but public investment in men's teams is in, at this point, likely the hundreds of billions. We're talking stadiums, practice facilities, investment around like building, you know, the kind of like restaurants and the scene around this.
Why do they think they build those things? It is not a case of if you build it, they will come. It is a case of they come because they love watching extra special talent. You're going to fill a stadium of 100,000 people, even in Dallas, where the Cowboys play. Next Sunday, they'll be sold out. And they suck, okay? Look at the Cleveland Browns this week. They lost to Cincinnati. They fill the stadium. 80, 90, 100,000 people. That's not happening for women's sports. It has nothing to do with the fact that they're women. So you want us to build you a 100,000-seat stadium and you think you'll fill it, Megan Rapinoe? No, you won't.
Stadiums, like a lot of that is done with public money. Show me the area where billions of dollars have been invested into women's sports.
Because they won't come for you. Yes, SoFi Stadium is a great example. That stadium is beautiful. Why do you think they built it? Because people want to go see the Rams. They don't want to go see the New York Liberty play inside SoFi Stadium. They want to see the Rams. And so what happens? Public money gets put into it. Now, I'm not a huge fan of public money being put into anything. But if the city's going to say, all right, we're making an investment because we've got stores and shops and restaurants and people will come down to a certain area that needs help. Let's face it, the area where SoFi Stadium is needs a lot of help. Rams are helping. I'm not sure they're at the point where they need to be, but they're helping. So let me just play the end of this.
Women, young girls, education, any of that. So, like, I think from a holistic perspective, there's so much we need to do.
Yeah. Here's what you need to do. You don't want to hear it. Folks, so you want to be in Bitcoin, but the wild swings, the volatility scares the crap out of you. I don't blame you. So you know what I've done? I get monthly returns now, literal cash flow, being in Bitcoin, but only in mining. So the secret to success when it comes to Bitcoin is in the mining. And this is what Get21Now.com does. It's a company called NFN8. I'm involved with them. I've already started getting my checks. This is institutionalized giant warehouses of these servers. This is an impressive operation. They've been doing this for a long time. I've vetted them. I've talked to them. I want you to talk to them too. I used to buy businesses, right? I'd have to deal with employees and angry customers and paying bills and all of the headaches that come along with that. Folks, I get 21% now on my money, paid monthly. This is cash flow, baby. And look, NASDAQ is already trading Bitcoin as a commodity. This is real stuff. The future is now. Get21now.com. You want to have cash flow, monthly payments, talk to these guys, all right? Talk to them. They've promised stuff to me, and they have lived up to every promise they have made to me. Get21now.com. Get21now.com. Pay them a visit today and tell them Grant Stinchfield sent you. First and foremost, I know we're now, just a little over 2 weeks from the election. But the most important thing to congratulate is the Dodgers going to the World Series and my New York Yankees going to the World Series. Woo! What a matchup this is going to be. I cannot wait for Aaron Judge to meet Shohei Ohtani and go in a classic fall matchup, Yankees-Dodgers. It's what we were hoping for a long time. Fabulous games over the weekend. So congratulations to those two teams. It's going to be great for Los Angeles. It's going to be great for New York. It's going to be great for the country as we have the other greatest fall matchup of all time. Only I think the World Series is going to be close. I think it's going to be the Yankees in 7 games. But I do not think this election is going to be close. Folks, the more I lay this out, the more I think about it. The more I have anecdotal stories of talking to specifically minority men. I don't meet any that are voting for Kamala Harris. None. Now, depending on what part of the country you live in, you experience a very different situation when it comes to this election. So when I'm in Texas, I have a very different experience than when I'm in L.A. Okay? And now, you understand that. But if you live in Pennsylvania, you have a much more different experience than you do if you live in Texas or L.A. So I've had the ability at times to travel around the country, and I see this, and I see a groundswell of support for President Trump. Now, if you can believe President Trump goes to McDonald's, and I think, in my humble opinion, that this is an absolutely brilliant move. And when I mean brilliant move, I mean absolutely brilliant move, because what President Trump did by going to McDonald's is he created viral videos like you will not believe. Everywhere you look, you would see President Trump, at least yesterday, when I was on Instagram and social media, President Trump everywhere. So this is the kind of thing that I think was a smart move on his behalf. And he calls out Kamala Harris as literally being a liar. Then at one of his rallies, what is President Trump? He calls her out for being more than a liar.
He is radical left. And this one, Kamala, is further left than them. So you have to tell Kamala Harris that you've had enough, that you just can't take it anymore. We can't stand you. You're a vice president. The worst. You're the worst vice president. Kamala, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. You're fired. Get out of here.
Get out of here. She's, you know what, the S word he drops. Radar, please be on top of the Zoom, okay, buddy? Thank you. So for all of you on Rumble, we got to make sure we put those audio slates up. So as we go through this, you got President Trump calling her out. But more importantly, the trip to McDonald's called Kamala Harris out as a liar. We now know she never worked at McDonald's. You had her resumes that were obtained by the Washington Examiner going all the way back to when she was just out of college. No mention of working at McDonald's. None of her other resumes that she had ever filed for anything before had any mention of working at McDonald's. The McDonald's in Alameda says, well, they don't say anything because they're not responding to comment. Now, if she worked there, you better believe they would respond. And yet, you have those on the other side saying this was the worst thing he could do. The guy's likable. You see President Trump, a billionaire, in a McDonald's apron behind the glass. And, oh, by the way, guess what else he did? He bought everybody their lunch. I'm surprised the mainstream media, I'm surprised the Democrats aren't coming at him, suing him for trying to buy votes. Oh, wait, isn't that what student loan debt is all about? Oh, wait, isn't that what the Democrats do with just about everything? But he bought everybody lunch. This is the kind of guy he is. Listen to his interaction here.
Well, that's a good-looking group. Hello, everybody. This is not a normal situation, is it, huh? How are you? What a good-looking family. How did you produce those good-looking kids? Oh, they look like the wife. They look like the wife. How are you? Nice to see you. That's great. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. Thank you. And there'll be no charge. Trump is paying for it. Is that okay? 2024. Oh, you're doing some extra stuff.
Oh, okay, great.
This is all on Trump.
Oh, all on Trump.
I'm allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Let's check and make sure it's
Okay.
everything you said it would be.
It better be. It's going to be the best you ever. I made it myself.
You're the man. Make America great.
That's the order. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good time.
Now,
Have a good time. That's great, isn't it?
I think it's great, Mr. President. I think it absolutely is great. Now, can you imagine the Secret Service nightmare for this? I would imagine you'd have to screen every car. Now, there's something to be said. Maybe they don't know what McDonald's he was going to go to, and there's the element of surprise. But can you imagine having to screen every car? Then you pull up, and President Trump's at the drive-through window. And he was doing a good job on fries, though I have a buddy of mine who pointed out the fact that the fry holder needed to go into the scooper, and he wasn't quite doing it right, but we give him an A for effort there on working the fries. And so now you have Democrats like Barbara Lee right here in California, radical congresswoman from this state. Barbara Lee comes out and says this was a huge mistake. This was a stunt. Well, of course it's a stunt. Nobody disputes the fact that it's a stunt going to McDonald's. President Trump's not really going to work there, but it's a stunt that worked. He literally had everybody, just so happy. The smiles across the street. You should have seen the crowds. You see the drivers that just have a. Of course it was a stunt. But Barbara Lee says it doesn't work. Listen to Barbara Lee.
There's no logic to it. It's a stunt. He has not put forth an economic agenda. He, as you know, appears to be not well. And he's engaged in some really bizarre types of activities during this campaign.
So, wait, hold on. We know it's a stunt. I'll agree with her on that. It's a stunt that worked. The videos went viral. She said he appears to be not well. What do you mean he appears to be not well? The Wall Street Journal did a 90-minute interview with President Trump, and they debunked any claims that his age was getting to him. The Wall Street Journal comes out and says, you know what, the guy's sharp as a tack. You could see that last week with the Bloomberg interview that we went through. Not well. Give me a break. And then she says he's put forth no economic agenda. Oh, really? No economic agenda? So the idea that you're going to tariff China, okay, and make sure you bring American jobs back here. If China wants to bring goods in the United States, you're going to have to bring plants here, which in the end, all that's going to do is China's going to lift its tariffs on U.S. goods, and we're going to create more goods, or we're going to send them to China. So that's going to create more jobs in the United States. He's talked about his economic policy of cutting taxes across the board, taking uncertainty out of the world for business owners, job creators, and investors. You take uncertainty out, you know what happens? The economy gets unleashed. So when he says he's going to cut jobs, and what does he say? Drill, baby, drill. Is that not part of an economic agenda? Now, Kamala Harris on the drill, baby, drill said she wouldn't ban fracking. Her campaign comes out with a statement backtracking on the fact that she's going to increase drilling. Well, that's not what she said, they said. Oh, she just said she's not going to ban fracking. Well, which is it? You going to unleash drilling or not? So she's not going to ban fracking. No, fracking isn't banned. We're just not going to give out any permits to drill. Do you see what I mean? Drill, baby, drill is an economic policy, folks. It absolutely is. Taking away regulations. When you go in and you say, you know what, my economic policy is going to bring in Elon Musk and we're going to root out waste, fraud, and corruption. We got entitlements that are through the roof. I'm going to talk a little bit about where our deficit is now. Record-setting deficits. But when you talk about rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse and entitlements that are nuts, I'm going to tell you that is an economic policy. Because you cut government spending, you cut inflation. 855-785-8255, 855-785-8255. Two lines open now to the studio. 855-785-8255. We're going to take some of your phone calls. So you want to hear what patrons think about President Trump, why I think this is going to be? I don't know if I really want to say this because I don't want to jinx it. But the more I move forward, the more I think this is going to be a Reagan-Mondale-style route. President Trump is winning in all 7 swing states. The Real Clear Politics average in all 7 swing states have him up by 1%. Do you know how huge this is? He was down by like 6 in 2016. Now, what about the cheating? Are we ready? You have courts that are punting left and right on this. Already they're punting. Oh, we don't want to get involved in the election. Here's my question. Why wasn't this done long before now? Why are we waiting 2 weeks before an election that we now have courts ruling on removing dead people from the voter rolls? Why wasn't this done last year? Why wouldn't it have all this worked out? This is what I mean when we have a very big problem with moving into this election. So without the cheating, we go on a Reagan-Mondale route. With the cheating, man, oh man, this is going to be tighter than a frog's you-know-what. Folks, there's a war going on in this country, and it's a war on all of you. It's a war on your assets. It's a war on your investments. It's a war on freedom. What do you do to protect those assets you work so hard for? I would offer up this. Gold. Gold has been a safe haven for the precious nest egg, all right? A safe haven for cash. Gold has stood the test of time as a portfolio protection maneuver. Why do I say this? Because you have the entire world waging war on the American dollar, and the smart money has been flooding into precious metals, specifically gold. Well, my friends over at Colonial Metals Group can help you with putting money in gold and protecting and securing your assets. Here's how you do it. Go to freegoldguide.com/grant. That's freegoldguide.com/grant. You can call them at 800-458-7356. That's 800-458-7356. China is buying up gold in record numbers. Most central banks across the country are buying up gold in record numbers. Colonial Metals Group can help you. Again, freegoldguide.com/grant, or call them at 800-458-7356. So I am convinced that President Trump, if the cheating wasn't in place, would win in a landslide. I can't find anybody that's voting for her. The mainstream media can't find anybody that's voting for her. You had both CBS and MSNBC go to places like Arizona and North Carolina. They can't find Kamala Harris voters. You just heard that clip. The mainstream media saying, who's voting for Kamala? Nobody. Why? Because she's a disaster. She's not likable. She comes off as a witch with a B. I'm sorry to put it bluntly, but that's the fact. So President Trump is a likable guy. He goes to McDonald's.
Tight. You got the salt on it. Never touches the human hand. Nice and full.
Thank you.
Oh,
Good. Nice and clean. course, my hands are nice and clean.
I hope you
He's a
washed
good
them,
instructor.
Mr. President. Did you wash your hands before you did that? I hope so. So, yes, they are absolutely nice and clean. And so I think it was a brilliant move. And I'm telling you, without the cheating, President Trump is going to win big. 855-785-8255. Let's go out to line 3, John in Santa Monica. What say you on this topic? John in Santa Monica. Let's see. John in Santa Monica. Dan, the phone man, we're trying to take phones. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, Grant. Grant, you're a genius, buddy. I'm telling you, I watched that thing 10 times. Trump takes and two pinches of salt over his left shoulder. Then he says, oh, we're going to spice it up with a little more salt. So he says, is there a certain amount of salt? And he just starts shaking the salt out, give it like a triple dose of salt.
Oh, gosh.
He's completely, it's an ad-lib stand-up act, okay? And then he's just talking and BSing, and he's handing out fries. Then he gives fries to the fake news guys, you know. And I'm telling you, this was $1 billion advertising thing for $1.50. And he needs to go to In-N-Out, has open stores in Arizona. He needs to go to In-N-Out. If the In-N-Out people are listening that manage that thing, call him up and get him out there. It'll be free promo for you. And he needs to do a fries on Fridays, a Trump burger. He could Trump T-shirt burgers. Man, he needs to milk this. And then he did the barber shop. Another brilliant move.
Yeah, he went to a barber shop in the Bronx. And don't forget,
so let's say you got 20 guys in that barber shop, but you've got 5 million people watching it.
That's right. That's right.
And,
well, great call, John, and I appreciate the call. Thank you. So John is right. Barbershop, and it isn't about the people there. Even the rallies, even when you get 80,000 people in a rally, think about it. Yes, you're talking to those 80,000 people, but who are you really talking to? You're really talking to the audience that's watching on Real America's Voice and Right Side Broadcasting, and when Fox News takes it. You notice Fox News isn't taking the rallies like they used to? I think it's devious on Fox News' behalf not to be taking these rallies. So I see a momentum behind President Trump that I hadn't seen since when Joe Biden was still in the race. I saw it when Joe Biden was in the race. I felt we lost it for a little bit. I feel like we've got it back. This is peaking at the right time. 2 weeks from tomorrow is Election Day. If you're in right now, California, you got your mail-in ballot, send it in. All right, early voting now is starting in most states around the country. Early voting starts today, in-person early voting, with a lot of the states that do it for a week and a half or more. All right, so here's the other situation. I told you about this election litigation. We are 4 years from the last election. Why are we now having lawsuits related to whether we can take dead people and people who don't live in the state and people who aren't eligible to vote off the rolls? Why is that happening now? Why didn't that happen 2 years ago? I blame the previous Republican leadership, Ronna McDaniel, for this. We should have been on this a long time ago. I blame state legislatures across the country that didn't get this under control. You've got a situation now where there are states that are being sued, okay? You've got Virginia, which, we talked to Dr. Sebastian Gorka's wife, who's the chairman of the Fairfax County GOP, that's in the middle of that lawsuit. The DOJ is suing them from taking basically ineligible voters off the rolls. This is too soon before the election. The DOJ should be helping them, not suing them. Look at this. Here's a judge in Georgia blocked a new rule from the state's election board requiring counties to hand count ballots. Now, for those of you that do not like machines, this is a good rule. I am a believer now after being right in the middle of this, folks. And I mean right in the middle of this. I've told you I've done more depositions on these machines. I've studied these machines. Not as much as Mike Lindell, but man, I'm right there. I am not my biggest belief is not worrying so much about the machine and flipping votes as it is about the counters, about stuffing the machines, about these mail-in ballots. about the people that are in charge of the ballots. This is where my biggest concern lies. And I think when you look back at what happened in Milwaukee and Fulton County, Georgia, where it certainly appeared to me like ballots were being stuffed, this is the huge issue. So Georgia blocks a new rule that would allow this. In Pennsylvania, you've got a court that said it will not rule. So again, this is the old Supreme Court model. Let's just punt. Let's just not get involved. But that's not boldness. You need to be involved. So this is a ruling that said it would not decide issues related to mail-in ballots this close to the election, including a bid to prevent counties from tossing mail-in ballots with an incorrect date. If the rule says the mail-in ballot has to be dated by X date, which let's say it's election day, and it's not dated on that date, it's dated after election day, why isn't it an open and shut case to throw these out? Now, in many states, Alabama's going through the same thing. It's not going to matter in Alabama, but it might for some tight congressional race. It's the same situation we have here in California. These rules in California matter for tight congressional races. But why, if it's not dated properly, are we allowing the ballot to be counted? That makes no sense to me. The law is the law. Get the ballot in postmarked by X time, and if you don't, the ballot doesn't count. It's that simple. Yet again, I get back to this philosophy. We're dealing with this 2 weeks before an election. Why didn't we adjudicate these things 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? Because lawyers, here's what lawyers do. Whether you're in a divorce or whether you're in a battle for election integrity, they love to wait to the last minute. You know why? They bill you. Wait to the last minute, and then they usually lose. Sadly, when it comes to Republicans anyway. All right, I want to get to Adam Schiff. He's got some serious problems about where his residence really is. Is it Maryland or is it California? And not what we claim, what he claims. Talk about that in a moment. But I want to finish up on President Trump. My belief that if there was no cheating, he wins in a landslide. That with the cheating, it becomes tighter than a frog's you-know-what. Now, Gavin Newsom wants to insert himself in all this. Now, I actually believe, Gavin Newsom has to talk badly about President Trump. But I believe Gavin Newsom, our governor here in California, wants President Trump to win and win badly because Newsom wants to run for president 4 years from now. If it's 8 years from now, God forbid Kamala won and then won a second term. Oh, my God. And if she wins, it means she would win a second term because it means they have now solidified the cheating so well that we will never win another election again. So when I tell you that life as we know it will be over in America if Kamala Harris wins, I ain't kidding you, folks. So I think Gavin Newsom is actually rooting for President Trump secretly, even though to keep his persona, he's got to say things like this.
Well, I know it's a loaded word, but when you say you're going to be dictator on day one, I mean, look up the definition of fascism, the characteristics of a dictator, an authoritarian. I mean, General Milley said it himself.
No. You know what? I want you to look up the definition of a dictator and what a fascist is, and look at your freaking self in the mirror, Gavin Newsom. Think about what these liberal governors did to us during COVID. Think about the lockdowns, the mandates. Think about how they tell us how we should be living our lives. They tell us how we should be running our businesses, how much we should pay our employees. See, they project. Republicans aren't fascists. It's the complete opposite. And President Trump certainly isn't a dictator. He's the complete opposite.
But Trump, again, reinforced it himself. He talked about suspending the Constitution. This is serious stuff. You saw this last week, threatening to eliminate funding, including, by the way, to schools in California, $7.9 billion a year we receive in federal money to educate our kids if we don't do his quote-unquote bidding. You saw it a week.
What do you think Gavin Newsom does to schools in California? These school boards are in the exact same lawsuits with California because they're holding back money. So here's the real deal. Administrations in position of power, whether it's at a state level or a federal level, use money as a weapon, as a tool. Depends on how you look at it. You hold back money to get people to do what you want them to do. There's nothing wrong with that. That's called politics. That's why elections have consequences.
He could go in the middle of disaster recovery efforts.
By the way, he's saying he's holding back money if they continue to push this transgender nonsense and invade women's sports. That's what President Trump says. Says if you go down that road, we're not going to give you federal funds because you're literally destroying girls' sports. Who doesn't agree with this? The reality is most of America does, which again gets back to this whole landslide idea.
With FEMA in the Southeast and places like South and North Carolina. And here he was threatening wildfire money yet again in the state of California. It's the most un-American thing.
No, you know what the most un-American thing is? Is you, Gavin Newsom. It's the most un-American thing to be a monster hypocrite, tell people one thing and do another. It's the most un-American thing to use your position of power to profit off of the people you oversee. Nobody does this better than the Newsom family. You have his wife that is making millions of dollars off public schools in California. You've got Gavin Newsom using his name to make millions. And yet he wants to claim that President Trump is the fascist? Are you kidding me? I mean, come on. Doesn't really make any sense, does it? All right. I want to go out to Matthew from Phoenix, Arizona, very, very important state as we move into Election Day. Matthew, what say you?
Good morning, Grant. I agree with you on everything you're saying. I am voting for Trump. My wife is voting for Trump. We've seen nothing but good from him. But one thing I want to quote is, I'm a commercial driver. I am a commercial instructor. What Trump needs to do is put people in his cabinet that align with their position. Like the Department of Transportation needs to be a driver watching over, not a beer cat, not a politician, to protect what we do.
Well, you know, Matthew, I used to own a fairly decent-sized trucking company. I sold it about a year and a half ago, running 18-wheelers for FedEx. Maybe Trump should appoint me as the Secretary of Transportation.
I would agree with you on that, and that's what I'm getting at, where a lot of my so-called friends don't understand.
Well, I like the idea of that, and it totally makes sense, and I think President Trump would do that. Look what he did with Linda McMahon. She was the CEO of the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE, and he put her in charge of Small Business Administration. She knows business. I mean, that's a very, very successful organization. And so I think he will do things like that. Though typically, the reality is, especially in Democrat administrations and Rhino administrations, they give their friends positions of power, whether they have industry knowledge in that or not. Last word, Matthew.
I do agree. We do need to get rid of the rhinos and put people that are for the American people within the power, not against it.
Agreed. Thank you for the call, and appreciate you getting out and turning out people to vote in Arizona. Matthew, thank you. So, listen, for people that are listening in states like Pennsylvania and Arizona and North Carolina and Georgia, I can name all the swing states. I won't do it. I really am asking you, go get 5 people, 10 people if you can. But if you get 5 people and get them to the polls, make sure they vote. If all of us did that, there's no way we lose. And I would say this to you, all of us here in California. If you live in one of these districts where it's going to be a tight congressional race, like certainly like Mike Garcia's race, go get 5 people, bring them to the polls. Right now, you can mail your ballot in. Go to your friend's house, get them to fill out the ballot, mail it in. All right? That's what needs to be happening. Trenton, Hermosa Beach, line 5.
Good morning, Mr. Stinchfield. I hope you're doing well without Jennifer being there.
Well, it's always sad when she's not here, but we're doing great.
Yeah. Hey, I think Trump is going to win in a landslide, too, because Kamala, she is like airsoft. She fires nothing that lands. The media is a skunk at the party anymore. Everybody figured them out. None of their stuff's landing. And the blue states are crumbling before her very eyes. So I think Trump's got all the mojo, and he's doing 99% of everything right. And she offers nothing. Zero. Yeah. She's the worst candidate ever.
Yeah. I agree with you. She is the worst candidate ever. Is she worse than Joe Biden? That might be a question for everybody out there. Trent, real quick, is she worse than Joe Biden?
I think so, because she doesn't know what she really wants. She doesn't know. At least Joe does.
Well, that's interesting. And Trent, thank you so much. See, in many respects, and normally I agree with Trent, but I don't agree with her. I believe that Kamala Harris actually knows what she wants. I believe Kamala Harris is a dedicated radical. I believe she believes in communism, that she believes in socialism. I actually didn't have that feeling about Joe Biden. My feeling about Joe Biden was he was so committed to power that he was willing to do anything for it. I'm not sure Joe Biden was a committed communist, but I do believe he's such a weak man that he was willing to sell his soul to the devil for power. Now, Kamala Harris will sell her soul to the devil for power, but she's also a communist, which makes her, in many respects, I believe, more dangerous than Joe. Here's another reason why she's more dangerous than Joe. She's younger than him. She could be around for a long time. Now, if she loses this election, she's got big problems ahead of her as far as her political future, as far as her future in general, when it comes to a career in politics. So that's why I believe Kamala Harris is more dangerous than Joe Biden. But they're both pretty bad candidates. Pretty bad. All right, I told you Adam Schiff has some serious issues. I believe there could be fraud charges brought against him. My only question is, why wasn't this again brought out sooner than 2 weeks before an election? He will be the next senator from California. That's frightening, by the way. Why are we so late to the game on all of this stuff? I'll spell out for you the case against Adam Schiff in just a moment. Folks, are you tired of the big box stores pushing mom and pops out of business? Are you tired of China supplying Amazon with all the products you use in your home? Are you tired of toxic chemicals invading your home as well, being pushed on us by the big box stores and, of course, Amazon? Well, there is a way to fight back against all of this. American-made products, all produced by a American-made company that has been around for literally decades, shipped straight to your door at prices that'll beat Amazon. No toxic chemicals in these products either. I'm talking about causanow.com/grant. This is the website I want you to go to. It is part of a buyer's club of patriots that are saying, you know what? We're taking market share away from China. We're taking market share away from Walmart and Target. And we're going to start buying products from patriots, fellow patriots. causanow.com/grant. Do what I did. Become a member. I've been with them for a couple years now. I've switched my whole house over to this. Deodorant, dish soap, all the cleaning supplies you could ever imagine. Window cleaner, you name it, household supplies, anything you need, they are going to have it. causanow.com/grant. Go there today. They'll get in touch with you. They'll tell you about it. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. causanow.com/grant. I know that everybody knows Adam Schiff, pencil neck, bug-eyed Adam, whatever you want to call him. Lying Adam Schiff. I don't know. There's a million nicknames you could have for this guy. He's such a very, very, very bad man. I know that most of you know he doesn't live in California, yet he's running for Senate in California. That's illegal. He's got a house in Maryland, but most lawmakers, look, especially if you're from California, it's pretty hard to get back and forth in short order. You've got a place, you've got to stay, but do you declare it as your residence? Is that what you declare as your primary residence? And if you declare your house in Maryland as your primary residence, does that make you eligible to run for Senate in California? I think it makes you ineligible. Unless you're only declaring your house as your primary residence in Maryland because you want a tax break. Maybe it's a homestead exemption. Many states give you a tax break on if it is your primary residence. So, okay, if he claims that's his primary residence and wants to make an argument that, well, my home is California, but I live longer in D.C. because of the reasons of where my job is representing the people. Okay, you can make that argument. But now here's where he has a real problem. I'm not going to tell you I'm going to buy that argument, but I'm going to tell you here's where there's a real problem. Congressman Adam Schiff also claims his home here in California as his primary residence. So you can't have two primary residences. There's only one primary residence. So here is a summary, thanks to my man John Solomon over at Just the News, who uncovered this story. In the 2 decades before he became the Democrats' 2024 U.S. Senate nominee in California, former House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff repeatedly declared in mortgage and election filings that both of his homes, one in California, the other in Maryland, were his principal residence. The claims have now prompted an ethics complaint and could be prosecutable as fraud, experts say. Now, here's why it could be prosecuted as fraud. I don't think it will, because who's he defrauding? He's defrauding the taxpayers of California. Well, we know that the leaders in California are 100% on Adam Schiff's side, so who's going to charge him with mortgage fraud? And we know that Maryland is also filled with radical Democrats. Who in Maryland's going to charge him if he's committing mortgage fraud in Maryland? He is committing mortgage fraud in one state because you can only have one principal residence. So which is it, California or Maryland? I would argue it's Maryland. So he should face charges in California. That's not going to happen. At the very least, he should be kicked off the ballot. Okay? The problem is he's not going to be. None of those things are going to happen. And now we have the same situation that we're now vetting this out 2 weeks before the election. You're telling me of everybody that ran against Adam Schiff, they didn't have this before? Well, they should have. Now, how do we know this? With Just the News, I'll tell you what, they're great. Going all the way back to 2009, again in 2011, and in 2013, Schiff refinanced his Maryland home and declared it was his principal residence. Now, why do you do that? That's the other part of the fraud. You get a lower interest rate on your principal residence, and a second home would be a higher interest rate. So now, if you not just committed fraud against the taxpayers of a certain state, you've committed fraud against the mortgage companies as well. Again, I think it's the mortgage company that has the mortgage on his California home, and it's the taxpayers of the people of California. Good luck getting California to charge him in any of this. And the fact that it's an ethics complaint in Congress, they do nothing about this stuff. The ethics division of Congress is basically controlled by members of Congress. They let them get away with anything. So I don't have any great hope in this, but I think it is important that you remember this. Now, do you vote for Steve Garvey when you go to the polls? Of course you do. Of course you do. Now, I have also told you if anybody is committing fraud on the people of California, it's Steve Garvey. He hasn't run a campaign, yet he's raised millions of dollars on the hopes that a Republican will get elected, but he's really done nothing to earn your vote or your money. It's really quite offensive because there were candidates that would have worked so hard to win. They wouldn't have won. Sorry to break the news to you all. But they would have worked a lot harder than Steve Garvey's working. 855-785-8255. Now, Vincent in L.A. says he's a Democrat and he voted for Steve Garvey. Vincent, line 2, what say you?
Yeah, I've already actually early voted, and Steve Garvey was who I voted for. It's probably not the reason you agree with, but I just thought it was filthy what he did to Katie Porter, and I'd rather a Republican we can get rid of in 6 years than a moderate that sits there for 30 years.
Okay. So, are you voting for Trump?
No.
No. So you're a Democrat, voted for Steve Garvey. You don't like Schiff. Is it the crookedness about Schiff that you don't like?
I just don't like moderates in Congress. We had Feinstein for 20-plus years, and I hated her the whole time.
Now, would you consider Schiff a moderate? This is very interesting because I would not. I would consider him a radical, and I would consider what he did with the weaponization of government against President Trump is really quite heinous.
As far as policies, I would definitely call him a moderate, middle-of-the-ground Democrat.
Okay. So, Garvey, you're going with, and you listen to this program, and I appreciate that. I want to thank you for that. So, tell me real quickly, we're coming up on a break. You listen to this program. You're voting for Steve Garvey, but no Trump. What is it about Kamala you just love that you've got to vote for her over Trump? Oh, boy, we lost him. All right, no problem. All right, I want to turn now to the Treasury Department and its release of current numbers for the federal government. Do you know our deficit now for fiscal year 2024 is $1.8 trillion? That's $138 billion more than it was last year. As a percentage of GDP, gross domestic product, not that anybody really cares about this, but it's 6.4%, which is a very, very high number. That's up a couple, just 0.2. It's up 0.2% from last year. But the bottom line is, this is a tremendous amount of money we're spending. $900 billion in interest on our debt alone. We're borrowing about $5 billion a day. You tell me how we're supposed to lay that on our kids. And how are we going to get this under control? Well, I will tell you, one way to get it under control is with Republican leadership, not just in the White House, but in the House and Senate. It's the only way we get it under control. And with that, I want to bring in Republican Congressman Jay Obernolte from right here in Southern California. Congressman, it's great to have you back on the program.
Good morning, Grant. Happy Monday.
So I know the numbers don't surprise you because we see this Congress spending money like drunken sailors, and I feel bad for drunken sailors because it really makes them look bad. But this is getting crazy here, Congressman.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. And the numbers that you highlighted, I think, really understate the severity of the problem. I wish people would think about the fact that if you divide our national debt by the number of people in our country, you get the per capita debt that every one of us is, quote unquote, responsible for. And that number is now over $100,000. Wow. I mean, I think all of us would like to think that we are leaving our country and our world a better place for our children and our grandchildren than the one that we inherited from our parents. But how on earth can we say that when we're leaving them with $100,000 of debt each? And every year that we refuse to acknowledge the severity of this problem and start fixing it makes the problem even worse and makes that hole deeper and harder to get dig our way out of. And it's reaching crisis proportions.
All right. Well, part of me doesn't even want to ask you this question because I know you're in a campaign and nobody, not Democrats or Republicans, want to talk about this. But when you look at entitlements like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, something's got to be done. That's driving a lot of this. Plus, you add on the Democrat wish list and the spending and all of the crazy projects that they've laid on us. And it makes a recipe for disaster. So what does Congress do to rein this in if we had control of both Senate and House?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked the question because I wish more people would ask that question. What the Democrats love to say, the moment any Republican says balance the budget, the next thing out of their mouths is, oh, you're going to cut Social Security and Medicare. No, actually, Social Security and Medicare are walled off from the rest of the federal budget. They're trust fund programs. They have their own source of revenue. They have their own systemic problems. I mean, don't get me wrong. They need some structural reform, but that's not the same discussion as balancing the budget. So the Republican study committee, which I'm a member of, comes out with an annual budget every year that lays out a path to a balanced budget. And if you read it, you find out it is actually very doable. It will require at least 5 years of concerted effort. But, you know, it is possible for us to get there if we all push together. But push together, unfortunately, means we need to elect President Trump. So that we have a Republican in the White House. We need to maintain control of the House. We need to take control of the Senate. And if we can do those things and we can hold that power for a few years, we can get our budget back in balance.
Well,
but the other thing, Grant, that we need a constitutional requirement that Congress balance the budget every year. I think Congress has proven itself completely politically incapable of balancing the budget. And, you know, we the people need to require that of them.
Balance the budget. You can't even pass a budget, much less balance it. So as we look at all of this unfolding, I'm reading an article here, and they quote the Committee for a Responsible Budget. Have you ever heard of this group?
Sure. Yeah, I've heard of them.
All right. So they say that Kamala Harris's budget will raise the deficit by $3.5 trillion by 2035. And they say Trump's will raise it by $7.5 trillion by 2035. I think the problem with these think tanks is they don't understand when you add policies, they don't take in the effect of what those policies do, like driving way more revenue. How do they come up with Trump driving more of a deficit than Harris when she's the spend and tax individual?
Well, I mean, taking a very literal interpretation of some of the things that he has kind of casually proposed to do, like ending tax on tips and ending income tax for first responders. And he on the campaign trail, he throws these out these possibilities, and when these think tanks analyze them, they assume that they're passed and not paid for. And I don't think that's what the president meant when he said them. We Republicans, conservatives, we are in favor of lower taxes, but if you're going to make what we call a tax expenditure, meaning that it's going to cost the government revenue, you've got to pay for it in other places by reducing spending so that it doesn't increase the deficit. And I think that that's something that a conservative Congress would force any president to do.
The other very short-sighted nature of all of this is not looking at an effect of what could happen. If you don't tax people on those things that we just talked about, maybe they go out and they buy a new refrigerator that they weren't going to buy. Or maybe they go out and they buy a little more expensive car than they were normally going to buy. And guess what? Now you got companies that are making more money than they've ever made before. They're hiring more people than they've ever hired before because you have all these tax cuts. Now you have a bigger pot of people paying into the tax pool. You've got more profits from companies that are paying into the tax pool. And in the end, the government's making way more money, Congressman.
Yep. Yeah. What you're talking about is called dynamic scoring. This is what the Congressional Budget Office calls it. And it's a very imprecise science, but it's important, as you pointed out, to take those factors into consideration when you're talking about this. And I also think we ought to be talking about something called the Laffer curve. Have you heard of this, Grant?
I know Laffer, but explain it to everybody.
So the Laffer curve is there's this economic theory that examines the effect of increasing and decreasing taxes. And sometimes the government, and particularly Democrats, will assume that if we collected X amount of revenue at Y percentage income tax rate, we would collect 2X revenue at 2 times Y the rate. So the tax at 10% income tax would be half the tax at 20% income tax. But what economists say is that that's not true at all. People will adjust their behavior. If you tax them more, they are less likely to pay that tax. And so when you look back in the 1970s, where we had these ruinously high income tax rates of 70, 80%, people didn't actually pay that tax because why would you keep working when most of it was going to the government? So what Laffer argues is that we're already above that inflection point on the curve. In other words, raising rates now would actually result in a decrease in revenue, not an increase in revenue. Yeah. And I think that's probably right. So
I think what he's saying is very simpler. That you raise rates on me, I'm going to find a way not to have to pay that. And in the end, I think he's right. This goes for business regulations. It goes for all kinds of things that people will figure out ways around this kind of stuff, and the Democrats don't always get what they want. Jay Obernolte, real quick, tell people where they can find you. I know you got this big race. Where can they help you?
Oh, social media, follow me at Jay Obernolte. You can go to electjay.com. I'll give you all information about our campaign. But, hey, if you're listening to this program, would you please do one thing for both Grant and I? Go out and vote. If you haven't voted, mail in your ballot. Make plans to go on Election Day and vote. As Grant said earlier, find an early voting center. They're opening soon. But we all have an obligation to go to the polls and make our voice heard.
100% greatest message going yet. Congressman Jay Obernolte, good luck to you, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Have a great week, Grant.
Absolutely. You too.
Do you really trust her to run this country for the next 4 years? How have the last 4 years gone under him? Well, your tax dollars are being funneled overseas and to support illegal immigration. They've left our people behind, offering just $750 in aid as if that's enough. With political insanity that we're living through, supply chain shortages, natural disasters, and the looming threat of another pandemic, you need to prepare your family now. The Wellness Company offers 5 critical medical kits packed with life-saving medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, amoxicillin, Z-Pak, and more. Each kit is backed by Dr. Peter McCullough. Ordering is simple. Just a few clicks and it's delivered to your door. Head to twc.health/grant and use code GRANT to save up to $60 off plus free shipping. That's twc.health/grant and use code GRANT to save up to $60 off plus free shipping right now.
Well, that's it for us, folks. Thank you so much for watching. GrantStinchfield.com is the website, at Stinchfield1776. Please sign up for the email list. It is so important that we get your name and number. If we get canceled, this is the way I can get in touch with you. We can contact you, and we got updates about the podcast and all those things. Please subscribe, like, share all of this. Folks, 2 weeks left. Do you believe this? I thought it was going to be forever to get through 4 years, and now we're here. Election is upon us. Early voting is open in many, many states. You can mail your ballot in, do whatever you got to do, but get to the polls. Go get people, get them to the polls. All right, we're going to have a special Real America's Voice tonight, a Trump rally again. Me and John Solomon taking you through that. God bless every single one of you. Stinchfield's Army rolls. Thanks to all of you. We'll see you back here tomorrow.